Russia has to get out. All right, what's your next question?
A blunt demand to Moscow Wednesday as President Trump met in the Oval Office with the wife of Venezuela's interim president, Juan Guaido. The president saying that all options are open after two Russian Air Force planes landed outside of Caracas last weekend carrying nearly 100 Russian troops. Retired four-star General Jack Keane is a Fox News senior strategic analyst. So, General, welcome.
Glad to be here, Paul.
What do you make of this Russian intrusion so overt into Venezuela?
Yeah, it's a bold yet dangerous move, and it certainly further complicates the standoff we have with Maduro, to be sure. I think, Putin is somewhat buoyed by the military intervention in Syria and the success that they've enjoyed as a result of it. Their motivation was to prop up a regime that was in trouble, and they have largely succeeded at doing that along with the Iranians. And here they are in the Western Hemisphere. They certainly are a partner to Maduro, as they are to Nicaragua and also to Cuba.
Right.
But I do think 100 soldiers on two airplanes does not make a serious military intervention in of itself.
Well, but it's a clear signal. This isn't Syria, okay, in the Middle East. This isn't Ukraine in the Russian backyard. This is in our backyard. And to do that, can we allow that to continue, to happen, and particularly with the president making such a blunt statement?
I don't think we're in a place to conduct a military intervention ourselves. There's no consensus for that in the region, and I don't believe we would act unilaterally. However, we should do more than calling out Putin on it, which is what we are doing. We should go to his backyard, Ukraine, increase the significant amount of lethal aid to the Ukrainians. We should also, the Russians are in violation of the UN resolution on sanctions dealing with North Korea. They have never complied with it.
Right.
I think we have the evidence of that. Expose it and call them out on that. And at the same time, tell them, once again, to get out of South America.
Well, but it seems to me that this is, I thought that the intervention in the Crimea was a test of President Obama. When President Obama didn't stand up enough to that, they escalated in Ukraine and then went into Syria. They haven't paid any real price for certainly the Syrian side of that. Now I think Putin is testing Donald Trump.
He is.
You agree with that?
I do. I agree. And as I suggest, there are things that we can do other than just rhetoric, and hopefully they'll move in that direction.
And why don't you think that we could act militarily if they don't leave? And we know the Cubans are there as well. We certainly could do something to topple Maduro if we wanted to.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that in terms of military action, and would be successful. But I think what the president, and I think this is the right strategy, along with the allies in the region, are waiting to let sanctions play out, squeeze this regime a little bit more before we start taking military action. And just like every military action we've ever taken, Paul, the way it starts is usually not the way it winds
finishes,
up.
Yeah.
There are always consequences.
Right. Okay. All right. We'll be watching that closely. Let's turn to the decision by the president to recognize formally the Israeli control over the Golan Heights on the border with Syria. The right move?
Yeah, I think it is. And it's largely due to one reason and one reason only, and that's called Iran. If Iran had not established Syria as its strategic anchor in the Middle East, and from where they fully intend to encroach on the sovereignty and security of Israel, which they have been doing for the last 2 to 3 years, this probably would not have happened. But I absolutely believe it's the right move. We have got to counter the Iranians and the significant regional hegemony ambitions that they have. The Israelis have conducted somewhere in the neighborhood of 100-plus airstrikes in the last couple of years alone, dealing with the Iranian proxies that are operating in Syria. So, people are in our audience who may not have been to the Golan Heights.
I've been there.
It is such a strategic piece of land.
You look down on the Damascus plain there. Right?
Exactly. You can see where Iranians' Hezbollah proxies are from the Golan Heights today, and where the pro-regime forces are today. So that they never intend to give up that strategic piece of land.
What about the argument, and this is kind of an international law argument, that if you sanction the fact that Israel has taken this territory in war, which it did 52 years ago, and hasn't returned warned it, that this allows Putin to do what he did in Crimea, and we won't have a legal leg to stand on to criticize that, or the Chinese that they're doing in the South China Sea with those islands. You see the comparison?
I see the comparison. I still think it's legitimate for us to do this. We voiced opposition to the annexation of Crimea, and certainly that's had absolutely no impact on Putin. We voiced opposition to the militarization of the South China Sea. That's had absolutely no impact on Chinese.
Right.
So this is, I think, something that's in Israel's national interest, and we're supporting it.
All right. Do you agree with the president's decision recently to keep some U.S. troops, different numbers you hear, 400 to 1,000, in Syria?
Yeah, absolutely. We have 3 missions there. Make certain that the Syrian Kurds don't get slaughtered by the Turks, and they're going to establish a safe zone. Second is, even though the territory has been removed from ISIS, the ability for them to reemerge is real. There's 10 to 20,000 of them between Iraq and Syria. So the advisors with the Syrian Democratic Forces have got to do that. And then we have to counter the Iranian land bridge in the south. Those are the 3 things.
All right, General, thanks for being here.
Good talking to you, Paul.